And welcome to another episode of 50 Shades in Grey, where today we are going to talk about modern relationships and what they look like. And I'm not talking about modern relationships in terms of when you meet in your 20s and you do the stereotypical meet in your 20s, date for 2 or 3 years. If they're the right one, you then decide that you're going to buy a house together and then you have kids together and you go on that journey. I'm talking about the relationships that happen when those relationships don't work out and what they look like now, because I think that's changed a lot. And I think it's changed for many different reasons. So if you're, I guess, sort of late 30s, early 40s, maybe early 50s and onwards, and you're coming out of relationships now, whether it be a long-term partnership or a marriage, a long-term marriage, and you find yourself single, then you start a different journey. And for some people as well, that can be a really difficult time because you have been out of that game for so long and it has changed so much. But when I did them, it was just non-stop swiping all the time, that you start speaking to someone, you think you're getting somewhere, and then you don't hear from them, or you change your mind and you're not quite feeling it, or you have long conversations with people that you think this could go somewhere, and you literally have a whole relationship on text messages. So you actually never meet them, but you feel like you're dating someone that you never meet, and then you actually break up without meeting them. It's like an AI girlfriend or boyfriend sometimes. And so you go through this long process of trying to find someone in, as we've said before on this show, in pools that are getting smaller and smaller and smaller as well. So it's very difficult, especially if you're fussy so-and-so like I am, that you're trying to find someone that ticks all those boxes, because the bottom line is you don't need to settle anymore. You're quite content, probably, like I was, single. You're quite happy. You've got your routine. You've got your life. And I was thinking, do I want anyone else coming in and messing this all up for me? And when I say mess it up, I don't mean that they do anything, but relationships take work and they can be stressful, and that's usually a sign that it's not good in the first place. But you go then on this emotional roller coaster as well. And sometimes you think, I kind of quite happy to avoid that, at this stage where I am. Because if you get yourself in a good place, it's that balance of like, do I want to throw all this up in the air to sort of go on that emotional roller coaster again of like a relationship? And people that haven't done it, it's very difficult for them to understand that when you start dating again in your 30s, 40s and 50s, after you've been out of the dating scene a long time, it's not like you were in your 20s. And again, we've repeated this all the time. It's just different. I think you know what you want more. People know what they want more. You're less inclined to settle, and yet you still meet people that are inclined to settle. I've met plenty of people on dating sites that it just felt to me like they wanted someone, and I could have been anyone. And I think we all like to feel wanted for ourselves, and not just wanted because we're a breathing person with a heart, and we're good company, if you like. You want to be someone's everything. Now, I've always had that aspiration to be, as I'm sure you guys have. You want to be someone's everything. You don't want to just be they're okay. You don't. I'd hate to ever be with someone that kind of says to me in the end, you were a nice guy and I just stuck with you. I just thought it was easy. What a waste of my life that would be. But anyways, once you go through that whole palaver of the dating sites, and then you meet someone, and then you do get past the really awkward first date sometimes, and second date, and then as we all do, as we get older, we all have different circumstances, and that could be a variety of things. It could be a relationship can be a little bit toxic in the background that is still left over from their first relationship, or it could just be young kids. It could be older kids. It could be much older kids. it could be work circumstances, it could be commitments outside of work that people are now in a routine of. So there's all these so many things that have to actually fit before you get to that stage of getting through that first 3 months. Because after the 3 months is when you kind of get to know people a little bit better, and you then start maybe meeting more people that they're associated with. So you might get on absolutely great with someone, and then you can meet their friends, and then you just think, I can't see myself hanging out with these guys. Or it could be the reverse. They meet your friends, and I've had this before, where they just start arguing. You're having a nice evening, and all of a sudden one of your friends is arguing with this girl that you haven't been dating long, or this guy that you haven't been dating long, and you just think, oh God, I don't need this. It just doesn't make things easy. So then, but it could be then families. It could be meeting their family. It could be a different culture, a different lifestyle to what you're used to. It could be that, let's say that, you're a complete non-alcoholic and you go around there and these guys love to party and they're all drinking and rolling around the floor, and that may not be for you. So there's all these hundreds of hurdles that you have to get through. And those things you sort of ride with in your 20s. You sort of go along with them because you're young and you're learning and you're not yet sure what you do like, what you don't like. But when you get older, you think, I don't need to put up this shit. I'm too old for this. I don't have to. So you're much more inclined to sort of call things a day a lot earlier because you see the stuff that you don't want. So anyway, once you get through all of that, I think modern relationships now, for me, look in a way of where you meet someone and probably later on in life as well, they're going to have their job, they're going to have their house. If they've got kids living with them all the time or some of the time, they're going to have their kids there. They've got their routine. They've got everything set up, and then you've got the same. And it's not a case of where, well, is one of us going to move out? It could be a case of where, and I think this tends to work best now, and I've changed my opinion on this quite a lot over the last sort of 3 or 4 years, I think, really, of where you go, okay, well, you've got your life there and I've got my life here, and then they're going to meet somewhere in the middle. And that crossover is where us two meet. And then we'll both have these parts of our life that, I've got my house still and you've got your house still, and we'll stay at each other's houses all the time and we can be together all the time, but we keep our independence, we keep our lives. And I've especially found when I've spoke to guys that have been married or women that have been married, and they've kind of said, I'm not doing that again. Now, I've never been married, and it was always something that I wanted to do, but I don't know, over the last 2 or 3 years, I kind of look at the institution of marriage now and think, I'm not massively religious. So do I need to sort of be married? Do I want to share everything that I've got in a marriage with someone else? It's very difficult, isn't it? And I remember thinking this before, you could have someone moving in and thinking, hold on a minute, they're moving in with nothing. And I've got something here that this is everything that I've worked for, however big or small your house is or whatever it may be. And, I've built this for me and my kids, or, in my case, me and my son. Do I want someone then coming in there and, giving all that up on, because there's never any guarantee that things are going to work out. So it becomes a lot more pressurized then, I think. And I spoke to people, like I said just now, that have been married, and they're like, never doing that again. I'm not doing that again. I'm going to keep where I am. And if I meet someone and they've got where they are, and then, we've both got our lives. So if anything does go wrong, your life isn't turned upside down. It's, you haven't got to move out. One of you hasn't got to decide to move maybe across the country or, maybe few hundred meters away, then you've got to sell your stuff and get rid of your stuff because you've already got your own life. So I think modern relationships, and this, I've read articles lately where people that have got married later in life and high profile people as well, have openly said, we both live in separate houses and it works great for us. It doesn't mean they've got separate lives. They're not sort of not with each other at all, because that's really important, that you spend time with each other and you can live with each other without living in the same house, because you can stay at each other's houses a couple of nights a week, 6, 7 nights a week. And you may have houses that you know, that you live in together, but you've always got your own place to retreat to. And sometimes that's really important, especially when you've been single a long time, I think, that you've got that somewhere where you can go and it's like, well, that's okay. I can shut the door and it's just me. I can have a couple of days on my own. And I think also it makes you appreciate the person, because missing someone in a relationship lets you know that, your feelings for them, that you actually want to be with them. It doesn't mean it has to happen all of the time. And I think when we're younger, we don't manage missing people that well, because it's like, I miss you, I want to be with you, rather than I miss you. And it's quite good. I quite like missing you. Let me miss you for a while, and then we'll meet up and we'll get together. And then that'd be great. We can do all the stuff that when people have missed each other do, and we can enjoy it. And I think that's really important, that modern day relationships, they have that flexibility that we can both go backwards and forwards and live your lives together, but you don't have to live in the same place. Especially with kids, and especially people that have got young kids. Young kids they need to feel safe, I think. I always remember when my mum, she lost her husband, my dad, obviously, at a very young age, and us three boys are very young as well. And I always felt like any guy coming in to that scene was sort of a threat, I think. And you always felt like it was someone coming in to try and replace your dad. At least that's how I felt. And I think kids feel that as well. So I think it's very important that they have their own sort of place where they can feel it's still theirs. Whether their parents are divorced, or, one of them has passed, or whatever their situations may be, but they need to feel that they're not vulnerable to someone else coming in all of the time. And it may be you might meet people that are renting somewhere, and it's very easy for them to come and live with you, because you can always go to them, okay, look, this is not working for me. You need to move out again. And if they were only renting anyway, they can go back into renting. But I think it's really important with young kids that you both have those parts where they're safe, and you can almost separate things a little bit more. And it's great that you can join them together, because obviously as your relationship progresses, you want to be able to share more time with each other and share those moments where kids going to be involved, and again, could be older kids, could be younger kids, whatever those kids ages are. I think that's something that you work towards. But I think modern relationships now, they look very different in terms of how they're set up. I think women are a lot more independent now, and I think that's great. They don't rely on guys, not all of them. I think there's some that still like to and still want to, and that's fine. And I think there's a lot of guys as well that want that as well, that want to meet someone. It's like, no, I'll go out and do all the stuff I need to do, and that's your job. So it's much more traditional. And I think there are lots of women that still want that, and which is great, because it suits their own. But there's also a lot of women that are independent, that they're earning good money now, and they're successful in whatever they're doing. And they're like, I can stand on my own 2 feet. I don't need you paying for everything for me, or doing everything for me. I can do that myself. Um, and maybe that's not what they need anymore. Maybe you know, they just need to feel wanted, to feel loved, to be given time to, because that's what they didn't get in their other relationships. And I think it's probably really important in modern relationships now that you meet the people that you both provide the things that you want and haven't got, and didn't get from other relationships, and that you're looking for now. And I think that's a really important thing. And I'd love to hear, your guys' opinions of how you think modern relationships now work, and what they look like. What do you think modern relationships look like now after the relationship, your first relationship, second relationship? What are you looking at now? If you're single now, what is your ideal relationship? Are you the sort of person who thinks, no, I want to live in a house with someone? We're always there. We come home from work and we're there together. We do stuff together. We do everything together. Or are you, like I am, someone that likes their independence and likes to be able to do things together, but thinks it's still important that you do things on your own and miss each other and still have that sort of spark in your relationship, if you like? And I think when I look at and I talk to my son, so my son's 24 now, and talk to him about relationships, what they look like. I think they have a very different view. I think there's still a lot of traditional values that run through what they want. I don't think marriage is as important to them in terms of, do a lot of them think they need to get married anymore? I think a lot of them like the idea of marriage and like the idea of a party and celebrating something, but it would more be to please their partner if that's what they wanted. A lot of people grow up wanting that white wedding. They want to walk down the aisle in a church, even though they hardly ever go to church. And I think if you're a religious person, completely different. But I think if you're one of those people that, doesn't ever go to church, but all of a sudden you want to get married in a church, in the eyes of God, think, well, why now? Why do you find that important now? Or is it just the idea of like the princess wedding, maybe, or the prince wedding? And that's fine. If that's your bag and that's what you want, then, it's probably about your partner providing you with what you want. But I think a lot of families now in the current climate, especially young couples, probably both need to be working as well. They both want to be successful. I think I know for me, I I'm quite attracted to independent women in whichever way that is as well, that can take care of themselves and look after themselves. They're quite happy to take things on. They might make a few mistakes along the way, but they're quite happy to take things on. So I think modern relationships now are a lot more fluid, a lot more flexible than, it's not as traditional as it used to be. But I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on this. And I'd love to hear from any relationship counselors that are out there that are now sort of changing how they approach their counseling with couples. You don't have to live in the same house. Maybe it works where you have time apart from each other, you know. And I know sort of couples where maybe one of them works away and they say, although it's hard, at the same time, it's really great because you look forward to seeing that person again, because when you're seeing the same person every day when you walk through the door and you sort of bring all your baggage in with you and you're moaning at them, that can be a lot for both people to take on, So when you don't have that, you have that break, I think you appreciate it a lot more and it becomes a lot easier. It's now modern relationships, I think now are coming to a point of where there's no sort of like, well, if people said, right, we don't live together, it's not going to be a surprise anymore, you know, and it shouldn't be. It should be, oh, how does that work for you guys? Does that work for you guys? Because maybe it will work for one couple, but it won't work for another. I think that a lot of our doubts in relationships are probably around security. We want to feel secure, but do we ever know if we're actually secure? Because that could be our most vulnerable time. As soon as you start feeling secure in something, that's when sometimes, everything can just go from under your feet and then you're suddenly like, didn't see that coming. So maybe the security of having your own independence still and thinking, okay, if this does go wrong, I'm going to be heartbroken, but I'm going to be okay because I've still got this life here that I had before, and I can still jump back into that and I can still carry on with that. So, guys, let me know. I want to know your opinions of modern relationships. What do your relationships look like? Have you got a traditional relationship? Have you got a relationship that's a little bit different to the norm? And share that with me. Let me know on Instagram. You can grab us on there or on TikTok or through the mail on any platforms where you get this podcast. But thank you for joining me on 50 Shades in Grey. I appreciate you following. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you follow because that helps us maintain the platform. And we will look forward to seeing you soon. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.